This program is made possible by the friends and partners of Curator Ministries.
Hey guys, thank you so much for choosing to spend a little time with me today. I know that we all have really busy schedules and 1,000 different things we should be doing and pulled in 1,000 different directions. So I really appreciate you dedicating this time to spend it with me. Here recently, I've been having trouble sleeping. Have you ever gotten in patterns like that where you're not really even sure why, but you just are just really restless at night? I've always had this relationship with God for whatever reason. When He decides to talk to me, it's always 3 a.m. I don't, and lots of people have told me different theories as to why He wakes me up at 3 a.m, but I kind of subscribe to it's probably when my house is the most quiet and when He can get my undivided attention and really I can really concentrate on Him without all the other white noise and distractions of the day, right? So I know that that's a time when He will talk, He will wake me up to commune with me. But over the last probably 3 to 4 months, it's really been something different, right? I'll wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and He's not talking, so I know that it's not Him, it's something else. And I'm not really having a hard time going to sleep. Going to sleep, it's fine. It's just staying asleep is the issue. And so I've started to try to explore reasons for this because it's starting to affect me in my daily walk, right? So my cognition's a little off. I'm just always tired and a little lethargic, a little moody at times. So I'm trying to fix this problem. And one of the things that I've explored is people say, gosh, the space, the environment that you sleep in, you can have a restful sleep, a peaceful sleep if it's orderly and tidy and, aesthetically pleasing. And so I thought, well, maybe that's my problem because I don't know about you, but there are parts of my house are just kind of catch-alls, right? It's the parts of the house where you don't let company go into it. Just you kind of throw stuff into it and you get to that when you get to it, when there's time for it. Well, when the lady who built my house, she was in a different season of life. And so she built the house with the washer and dryer in the closet of our bedroom, which worked beautifully for her and her husband because they were older, their children were older. So she was like, I just wash my clothes and hang them right up. And it was such a blessing to her. It is such a curse to me because I have 4 kids. And so they just bring all their stuff down and dump it in my bedroom. So my bedroom is the laundry room. It's like complete disarray. I had one kid last week, I'm like, clean your room. Clean out your closet. Get the things that you know are dirty, put them in the dirty clothes basket, bring it downstairs and hang your stuff up. Put your closet to rights. That kid brought down in the middle of summer a Christmas sweater with the tag still on it. I'm like, 2 things. 1, not even season appropriate. And 2, the tags are still on it. So that's the kind of life that I'm living right now. My room is just, it's a disarray. And so it's not dirty, it's just disorganized, it's disheveled all the time. And so the thought of someone like going in that space gives me anxiety, it gives me heart palpitations. I'm like, I don't want people to see, my bedroom looking like that. Do you have spaces in your house like that? And so if I'm honest, there's spaces in my life like that, like, oh, I'm going to hide that part of me. I don't want people seeing that part of me because, I don't having the wrong impression of me, right? So I've worked on and am working on putting this thing back to rights and trying to make a more peaceful environment to see if that will help me sleep. And so in the middle of the night, the other night, God woke me up at 3 a.m. and He said, do you know why you're putting this room back to rights? And I was like, well, I want it to be cleaner. He was like, no. He said, you were created to bring organization to chaos. And I was like, what? And I know all of you OCD organizers are out there like, yes, confirmation, right? Because He started peeling back creation and He took me to day 1 through 3 of creation. And those were days where in the beginning, the earth was formless and void. And God said, he started to let there be. So what God started doing was he took something that was complete chaos, complete disorganization, that nothing lived in, and he started to create something out of nothing. And I was one of those creations. He started bringing order to disorder, one day at a time. And so he started showing me that is why we as human beings really desire order in our life. It's in our DNA, right? So the first thing he did was he separated on day one light from darkness. He said, let there be light. Well, he was the light. But what he did was he made a distinct line of demarcation that separated these two things, light and darkness. And you can go all throughout the symbolism of light and darkness throughout the Bible, but at its face value, we know that darkness symbolizes sin, and it symbolizes, lack of knowledge and ignorance. And we know that light symbolizes, well, one thing big it symbolizes is Jesus and God. I mean, Jesus actually called him, I am the light of the world, right? So you have these very distinct boundaries that are set for our thinking on day one. And God started showing me why it was important to have those boundaries in our thinking that he established on day one was not because, it was sin versus, good or good and evil. Not so much that as we know that light and day, they move. They're fluid, right? They actually dictate time for us, right? And because they move and they coexist with one another. They don't cohabitate, they coexist. And he was showing me that line was why it was important for us to understand the weight and the gravity of sin, because sin drives a wedge. It kind of blurs that line. Let me give an example. So my son asked me a couple weeks back if he could go camping. And I was going to join him on this camping trip, but he and his friend wanted to go up the night before I was going to go up. And I had got a space for the whole family to stay in. But he assured me, Mom, it's fine. I've got this tent. I got this air mattress. My friend's dad's going to be there. Can I just go up a day early and stay with them and until you get there? And so I didn't see a big deal in it. I trust my kid. So yeah, no problem. So I go up the next day, and I noticed that I texted him on the way there. I'm like, I'm almost here. Here's the address of the campsite that I'm going to be at. And I noticed that when I got there, he was in the car, like asleep. And I thought, well, isn't that odd? And so I asked him. I said, well, how'd it go last night? Oh, fine, Mom. Tent worked great. The air mattress. I mean, this whole cockamamie story about the air mattress and the tent. And my gut already told me this kid's lying because I'm not an idiot. I see that the air mattress is still in the box in the back of his truck. But okay, we'll go. We'll see how far you're going to push this. And so I kind of let him go with it. Well, the next day, he clearly was not going to tell me what had happened. And so I just told him, I was like, buddy, I know that you didn't sleep in the tent last night. And here's the evidence of it. So why don't you hit me with the truth this time? And he was like, all right, Mom. He was like, I slept in the truck. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you tell me that? And he was like, well, because I was afraid you'd be mad at me. I drug my friend up here, and it was late when we got in, and we were just kind of tired and lazy, and we didn't want to pitch this tent, so we just slept in the cab of the truck. And I said, well, what did you think would happen if you told me the truth? And he goes, well, I thought you'd be mad. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, because I drug my friend up here and slept in the front of this truck. And I was like, okay, well, let's say I would have got mad. What would have happened next? And I was like, well, you probably would have, would chewed me out. I'm like, maybe. I was like, and then what? And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, and then what? Let's say I got really, really mad and I chewed you, or maybe even grounded you. Then what? And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, then nothing. Then life would have went on. But the difference is that what you did by not telling me the truth is you jeopardized your integrity with me. because I rely very heavily on trusting you to do these kinds of things. So what you did, I was telling him, sleeping in this cab of this truck wasn't something I would have grounded him for. It wasn't something bad that he did. The thing that he did that was bad was concealing it from me. And the thing that he did that was bad was trying to hide it from me and lie about it to keep his hide out of trouble, because that creates something between he and I that only time can heal, right? Because once someone breaks your trust, you can forgive them, but it takes a minute for that to heal. That's what sin is. That is the gravity of sin. It separates us from God. I remember being his age and being in college, and I remember same things with my parents. My parent, I went away to college, and the first year I didn't do great. I mean, I had not kind of figured the college living out yet, and working and trying to juggle all these things. And the first semester, I dang near failed out. But my parents didn't know it. I mean, when they called, you think that I was a straight A student. I lied through my teeth. I'll be honest. And so what I found myself in this pattern of, because I didn't want to disappoint them, was they would call me and say, how's school going? Fine. And then no, it wasn't. How are your grades? Great, even though they weren't. And so what I felt was, because I had such anxiety about the lie, and having then to kind of lie on top of the lies, these layers, I just started to pull away from my parents, stop taking calls from them, stop going and seeing them, because the embarrassment of the truth weighed so heavy on me. And then the anxiety of having to keep up with my lies was creating this chasm. That is the gravity of sin. It's not even the lie that's so bad as the result of the lie. And that's what he's showing us in creation on day one. I marked a line, and I separated these two things, and they are forever to be separated. They can coexist. We can't deny that sin is out there and temptation's out there, but they cannot cohabitate. We cannot blur these lines, because that separates us also from our Father. So he starts to separate on day 1 through 3, and he starts to create these realms, right? He starts to create these realms that he is going to really show his glory through, right? And so he starts to almost like organize things. And it reminds me of these organizational shows that my daughter and I will watch, right? So on day 2, he talks about the vault. He separates the waters from the waters, and he has this vault in between. And it reminds me of like watching these organizational shows where they'll go through their drawers and they're separating, okay, what am I going to keep? What am I going to get rid of? What belongs where? And so he's showing even order that he is putting, together, even as he's separating, right? And he reminded me of times in my life where I had complete chaos, and one of the things that he had to do was separate and remove. And sometimes that means he separates me and removes me from people, places, sometimes circumstances, but sometimes whenever you're asking God for a change in your life, or you're trying to walk through, you know that there's dysfunction. You have identified it. Sometimes if you want there to be order restored, you have to be open to the idea that God may remove some things that are going to be painful, right? I heard T.D. Jakes say one time, don't be mad at the people that leave you. They were never meant to stay. Man, that's true. I can look back on my life and I can think of seasons where people were planted in my life for a reason, a good reason, but they were only meant to stay for a season. And the ones I tried to hold on to past the expiration date, man, it soured. And I had to be okay with letting people and letting things go out of my life when the season had expired, to free them and also to free me. Right? So the first 3 days, God spent separating. He spent those days creating these realms, or these containers that would reflect his glory. The last 3 days, or the next 3 days, he's going to spend creating things to fill those realms. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
We hope that you are enjoying today's program. We are so thankful for this opportunity to take the gospel into all the world. The only way we can continue to reach the world is through partnering with people like you. So today, if you would like to partner monthly or even a one-time gift, please make checks payable to Curator Ministries and send to the address below. If you would like prayer or more information, please call 304-638-6411. We hope and pray that your life is completely changed and that you see the goodness of God that is curated in your life.
Welcome back, everybody. We were just finished talking about the first 3 days of creation and how God separated and created something out of nothing. And now we're going to kind of dive into the last 3 days of creation. So now we have these realms that He set up to contain His glory. And the last 3 days He spends filling it. And this is a really exciting part for me. Happens, right? So the first thing that He creates are lights. He creates stars. He creates the moon and the sun, and He gives them all specific purposes and specific functions within these realms, right? For example, the sun and the moon. He gave them the governing power to govern day and night. And the stars, He gave them the power to not only govern day and night, but to reflect light onto the earth and to kind of act as symbols and signs, right? And so He creates these lights, and the sun and the moon He calls the greater light, and He calls it the lesser light. And people a lot smarter than I am can explain this a lot better, but the way that I understand the relationship with the sun and the moon is that the moon almost acts like a large mirror, kind of. It doesn't produce any light in and of itself. It has its own properties, it's its own being, but doesn't produce light. The sun produces all of the light, and through this rotation of the earth, you see a reflection of the light from the sun onto the earth. So it kind of acts like a large mirror, reflecting the light that the sun produces, which is kind of cool if you think about it. My family and I went to my brother's house a couple weeks back, and we built this huge bonfire out in the field, and the kids were roasting marshmallows and all the things, and it was a beautiful night. It was clear, you could see the stars, the moon was out, but I noticed that this fire was burning so hot and so bright that I couldn't see. It seemed like just a few feet away from the fire. It was kind of messing with my vision a little bit. It was hard to kind of focus on everything in the perimeter. It made everything seem much darker around it because of the heat and the brightness of this fire. And I remember as the night went on, my brother kind of put the fire out because we were going to put the kids to bed. And the first thing that came to my attention was when the fire went out and it was just the moon. How far the moon illuminated this field. It seemed like I could see for miles. I could see all the way down to the house. And it struck me, I was like, man, wasn't that interesting how hot that man-made fire burned? It really impeded my vision. But man, whenever the light of the moon that God made, it illuminated. And God spoke to my spirit and He said, you are made in my image. You are supposed to be a reflection of me. What are you reflecting? What are you showing? And I was like, ooh. He was like, are you showing a reflection of the kingdom of God, me? Or are you reflecting a kingdom that you've made for yourself? And so I started digging into this, made in the image of God. I've always heard that, I'm made in the image of God. Well, what does that mean? In a very practical way, right, is that we are made to reflect God's character. We are made to reflect His temperament. We are made to reflect the properties of God. That is how the glory of God gets, shown in the earth is through his kids, right? So it's kind of like my eldest son. My eldest son is a spitting image. You've heard that, oh, he's a spitting image. He is a spitting image of his father. And his father is a spitting image of his father. And I can look down through the family pictures and I can see his great-grandfather. I can see the imagery from his great-grandfather all the way down through these men. People haven't even met, but I can see the imagery and I can see the characteristics of these men within this lineage, right? Well, that's what imagery looks like. My son Marshall is not his father. He is an image of his father. When you see my son Marshall, you have seen my husband Doug. When you see my son Marshall, you could look at a picture of his daddy at the same age and you probably couldn't tell them apart. Everything from their gait to the way their little tics, the way they twirl their hair, the way they think. They are so much alike that I almost feel like I was just an incubator. I had no part in that one, right? Have you ever felt that way? But that's what imagery looks like. That God is not trying to replace you. He created you. He is trying to make you a reflection of himself so that you bring him glory and you can show him to other people. He shows himself to other people around you through you. Does that make sense? So if he has created us to kind of show himself through us, that's kind of why I think he was giving me the gut check about, well, what are you showing people? Are you showing people a true representation of me? Or are you showing people a kingdom that you built for yourself? And that kind of stopped me a little bit. I'm like, well, how do I build a kingdom for myself? How does that work? Right? And so he was showing me times in my life where I've kind of glazed over certain sin that I have almost started to treat like a pet. They've become palatable to me. It's not really been, it's not something that I see as a really big hindrance in my life. So I tolerate it. And he was showing me that people are always looking to other people for example and for guidance. And when they see me doing that, then they think that that's okay too. And though it may not be a huge hindrance in my life yet, it could be a huge stumbling block to someone else. And that's what I'm projecting. That's not his kingdom. I wasn't made to coexist, just like that line in the beginning. I'm not made to cohabitate with sin. There was a line of demarcation. I've been set apart and set into the light. That's what Jesus said. I'm the light of the world. He said, I am the light. Those who walk with me you won't walk in darkness. You will have the light of life. He pulled me out of there. I don't belong there anymore. You don't belong there anymore. So we have to be a reflection. We have to be a reflection of that. And he was showing me times where I have been judgmental and I have been stiff-necked. And that has been what I have shown people. And I have burned so bright, like that man-made fire, that I didn't illuminate anything for anybody. I impeded their vision on everything else around them. I made them feel like they were so dark that they couldn't even fumble around in it. I didn't illuminate the way for anybody. That was my kingdom. That wasn't God's. And so he started carving those areas out in my life where I even sometimes had good intentions, but bad results, bad execution. There was a lady telling me the story. She was telling me why she stopped going to church. And I was trying to get her to go back into a body. I didn't care what church you went to, just get into a body plugged in, because it's so important for you to have relationships and communion with other. It's important for you to have a shepherd. You need a pastor that's sitting over you that will help guide you. More than just an online presence, you need a physical presence that you can call on, a physical body that you can call on and that you can get plugged into. Because it's not good for man to be alone. You have to be plugged into a body. And so I was trying to explain this to her. And she said, the reason that I don't she was telling me that I find most Christians to be very hypocritical. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? And she said, well, and she gave me the story of this woman who, every time you saw her on the street, she always used, the Christian jargon. Well, praise God. Have a blessed day. Bless you. I'm, blessed and highly favored. All the things. And she said, but she was also the one that you would hear gossiping, and she's tearing people down, pot stirring and causing trouble. And she said, I'm like, how can that I don't want any part of that. There's nothing appealing about that to me at all. Why would I want to go plug into people that I distrust, right? And that behave in this way. And it got me thinking about it. I'm like, when we're not a true reflection of God, that really is the output for people. We really are a hindrance to people. What people look at us and they see when we're not a true reflection of God, what they see is this private club that we have become members of, that we think that we're kind of like the Pharisees. We have a special connection to God, and because of the special connection to God that not everybody else gets to take part in, that we have special favor and special blessings will come upon us, and that we are just kind of grade above, and that we don't ever mess up. There's no sin in our life, but we are certainly going to point out the sin in everybody else's life, and that that we are just this little separate society in and of ourselves, and that is not appealing to anybody. It's not appealing to anybody because it's not truth. That is not real, right? And so I had to confess to her. I first had to apologize. That was number one. I apologize that was your experience. But number two, know that what you saw was a glimpse of her reality. You saw her slip a little bit, and the reality is that we all have flaws. We all have areas of our life, just like I said in the beginning of this, all areas of our life that we try to hide in darkness because they're embarrassing, right? Because sometimes it's hard. It's easier just to hide it than to illuminate it and deal with it. It's easier to make pets out of it than to get rid of it, right? But when we choose not to face the truth and actually be a reflection of the truth, we're hurting people. We are becoming stumbling blocks. We're not illuminating anything. So Paul writes to the Ephesians. The whole letter was addressing a mind change, a shift in perspective. And that's really my prayer for us, is that we fully get a hold of the revelation and see ourselves as a reflection of God, just like that moon is, a reflection of God into the earth. You want to see change in your home? Do you want to see change in your neighborhood, in your nation, in your community? Get a hold of that revelation of what you carry, what you reflect, and then start creating it. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time.